This video is for the new AQA specification, and it's looking at Unit 2, which is HRM, Human Resource Management, and to start off with, we're looking at managers, leadership and decisions. So the first question you have to ask when considering HRM is, what is the role of a manager? I mean, the obvious answer is to get the best out of the labour force, to get the best out of its subordinates. But we need to delve a little bit deeper than that. When considering the most successful managers and leaders within the business environment, we know that they were able to successfully create a vision for the workforce, a vision that the labour force believed in, and it was clear, it could be communicated, and they were able to act on it and work towards. The manager was able to set corporate objectives which was for the whole company to achieve, and again, it was easily communicated to each function. And therefore it allowed each function to be directed and for strategies to be created and agreed upon and worked towards achieving this one objective. It was also a good manager is also there to motivate the subordinates and embed a successful culture to help drive the business forward and help drive every single employee. So that's what the role of the manager should be, and you can imagine every manager wants to achieve that. But every manager has a different personality, they're a different individual, and they have different styles. And some believe in that different style in achieving that corporate objective and getting the best out of their workforce. And what this video is going to do today is going to look at just one theorist in terms of how to decipher whether this style is beneficial to the business and how it actually is embedded within the workforce culture. So this one theorist that we're going to consider today is new to the specification, and it's the Tannenbaum and Schmidt Continuum of Leadership. And this wasn't part of the old specification. It is one of the biggest new changes to this unit. So therefore we really need to consider it, because you can imagine the examiners will probably want to test it. So in terms of this, it looks at a scale. They've created a scale which is used to measure authority, what authority might be needed or passed on from the manager, and the amount of freedom that should possibly be allowed to its workforce. And again, within this scale, you can see lots of different types of leadership styles and how they may kind of differ depending on the situation, depending on the workforce. Now, what I have typed underneath the picture is it recognises that chosen leadership style depends on a variety of factors, and that's really key, because one manager might have one style in one business, but then if they go into a different business, they may believe that a different style is needed. And some of the reasons for that is because of the perceived qualities of the subordinates. So for example, the skill level. If the workforce is maybe lacking that skill level, then the manager may believe that they need more authority, and they're probably not willing to allow as much freedom. It might be down to situational factors. So for example, maybe the business is in a short-term crisis and they need fast decision making. They need to again embed these decisions and I suppose carry out action immediately, and therefore again the manager may believe that it's their responsibility and they need that control. So it does depend on lots of different factors. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the scale, and we're going to really look at the different elements of this scale and how it switches from the need of authority to the allowance of freedom. Okay, so this is the scale, and as we can see, it has many different elements. Which again, every single element is crucial. Now if you think about it from the top, and we think about it from this scale here, we can see that it goes from a manager-centered leadership to a subordinate-centered leadership. And when considering this, we need to also think about the different circumstances. And again, one being the type of subordinate, as I mentioned earlier on. If we bring in McGregor's theory X and theory Y, and if you don't know what McGregor's theory X and Y is, there will be a video based on this. But McGregor thinks there's two types of workers, and there's two types of worker categories. There's a theory X and a theory Y. Now, the theory X worker, I suppose, isn't very aspirational, isn't very ambitious. They're there to get an income and work, for example, from 9 to 5. They lack ambition. They're willing to do their role, but probably that's it. Not go above and beyond. Now, in this type of theory, a theory X would probably need a more of a manager-centered leadership, because they're probably not going to take the initiative. They're probably not going to drive further and try to really enhance the business. But then you've got theory Y worker, which is the complete opposite. The theory Y worker is ambitious. They are aspirational. They do want to work, I suppose, higher up within the company. They do want to excel. And with that type of worker, you may say, well, actually, a subordinate-centered leadership approach might be beneficial. Now, before we look at the manager actions, as we can see at the bottom of the scale, we need to look at these 4 different elements: tell, sell, consult, and joins. Now, what these 4 do, they create categories of leadership actions. So if we look at tells, the leader identifies problems, makes decisions, and announces to subordinates. They expect implementation. The leader sells, so the leader still makes decisions but attempts to overcome resistance through discussion and persuasion. If you think about consults, the leader identifies problems and presents it to the group, listens to advice and suggestions before making a decision. And finally, we've got joins. The leader defines the problem and passes on the solving and decision making to the group, which manager is part of. Now, if we think about the usual type of management styles, we can see that tell is very autocratic. It's a very autocratic where the manager directs. The decision making is very centralised. The manager makes the decisions, and that's for the labour force just to act on. If we think about sells to consults, then we start to see a democratic style of leadership to a paternalistic style of leadership. They're starting to, I suppose, empower the workforce a little bit more. They're starting to try and introduce them maybe into decision making, especially with consult. And then finally, we've got joins. And maybe this is heading towards more of a laissez-faire approach where there is a lot more freedom to the workforce. And there is that complete trust in the workforce. The skill level will be probably high within that. You tend to see that a lot in creative industries where they trust the worker to work to the best of their ability and drive the business forwards. So now if we look at the manager actions, we can see in tell, the manager makes decisions and tells staff about it. In the sells, the manager sells decisions to his staff or her staff. The manager presents ideas and invites questions from staff in terms of consult. The manager presents tentative decisions subject to change. The manager presents problems, gets suggestions, then makes the decision. And the manager asks the group to make decisions within the limits he or she sets. And finally, the manager allows teams to develop options and decide on the actions defined by the manager. So we do see an autocratic approach, which then, I suppose, moves forwards depending on the trust that is possibly given to its subordinates. So now I've thought of just 3 examples to embed into this scale. The most obvious one being Donald Trump. We can see how he's acting within his presidency in terms of his no-nonsense attitude. But again, it was very, very similar, as you can imagine, because it's his personality. But when he was managing businesses and that entrepreneurial side to him was a no-nonsense attitude. He pays great attention to minute details, he has very specific requests and is known to be very demanding, but he would definitely be within the tell. Okay, so Donald Trump within the tell, very autocratic, and then we've got Warren Buffett, and he's the complete opposite. He'd be probably moving towards the joins. Okay, so the reason for that is he gave his employees complete freedom to manage. Or to even think of creative solutions when problems arise. He only intervened in dire situations, but you can see there he allows the team to develop options. So therefore, he was the complete other side of the scale to Donald Trump. And then we've got another one who's still subordinate, centered leadership, but maybe not as much as Warren Buffett. And you've got Carlos Ghosn. So he's, again, very reasonable whilst dealing with employees. He provided them with challenge to perform better and at the same time made them realise that he trusted them and their abilities. So again, not quite as far in the spectrum